It's a Tuesday edition here on Zero Block 30, and today we have 5 rounds of the magazine. Round number 1, there's some huge news out of Kate's lovely Philadelphia that I'm excited about, and I could not agree more with it. And I say that I probably wouldn't even be talking about this on the podcast if I didn't just spend like an hour and a half in traffic. Like morning traffic, I've had enough. I work from home. I have to drive my kid like across town to school now. It's a nightmare. The people that have to commute every day, I've forgotten what it was like. Honest to God, I have, because my kid used to go to school a mile away from the house where I was in and out maybe 7 minutes, like 7 minutes tops. Now spending an hour in the afternoon, an hour in the morning. It's for the fucking birds, man. This is traveling shit.
That will deteriorate your mental health.
When is the last time that you really had to deal with commute traffic? I mean, it's probably been over a decade for you, right?
I would say well over, because even when I worked on Lackland before I got out, my day started at 4:15. Like we had guard mount at 4:15 in the morning. So you're not dealing with traffic at 4:15 in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we would get done at 1500. So 3 o'clock, there's no traffic either. So it's probably been since I lived in Virginia and had to go back and forth from Quantico to Fredericksburg.
And DC traffic, traffic's a nightmare. So,
oh my God, dude. And because getting off Quantico, it was 2-lane traffic to get on 95. And those were the only options. You either had to go southbound or northbound on 95, and that's it. Everything flows through there. It's like having one artery. So then to get off base, to get from like my office to get to the road, to get to 95, it could take me 45, 50 minutes in traffic just getting to the gate if I was leaving at around 1600.
You know, one of the worst feelings in the world, and you guys know me, I like to cut it close. I'm usually late. So in the military, you cannot be late. You get in trouble for that shit. When I lived off base, I would cut it as close as I could. I think I was crushing it. And then as soon as I crested the hill and got to the base of Camp Pendleton, like one of the gates, to see the line and see it backed up like a fucking mile and a half, and your heart just sinks. You're like, oh fuck,
that was the only thing
gate.
I really changed, like MP wise, because when I was a company gunnery sergeant, it was for an MP company, and it used to piss me off having to wait to get in. And so when I was finally in a position of authority, like over the other MPs, I would go to the gate and I'd be like, just start waving motherfuckers through. Why are you like, if they have an ID, there's civilians that live on base anyways. Like for Quantico, it made zero sense. There's a civilian town in the middle of the base where all you have to say is, I live in Quantico town, and you can't even check their IDs and shit before they go in. Like they have the right to go in. If we're letting them in and it's a known meth place, why are we keeping anybody out? Just let everybody in. Just get rid of the gates totally.
Yeah, get rid of the gates. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Kate, before we continue, I need you to tap your microphone. Nope.
Hell yeah. Classic Kate morning happening here.
Monday shit. But Chaps, while she's figuring that out, I'll just say that the biggest driver, I think, with commuting too for you, it's a lot different for me if I'm just sitting on a train mindlessly reading or listening to a podcast versus, okay, you actually have to pay attention to what's going on around you. There's a very big difference there.
And I'll tell you this, I've recently gotten into podcasts because of this. I never listened to podcasts before. I honestly, like, this is my job, and it's been my job for 5 years, primarily to produce podcasts and things like that. Never really listened to them. I was like, I don't really understand the allure, but people listen to them, so I'm going to make some, I guess.
What did you listen to in the car? Just music?
Yeah, because I wasn't in the car that much. And if I was with my family. And like, if it was my wife and I, like when we would do long trips, before I started working at Barstool, for instance, every summer we would take a trip to Florida, but we would drive. So we would pick like an audiobook or a podcast series like Serial, like one of the ones that was huge, and it would take over essentially conversations. And I'm like, well, I got to listen to this shit. And then I get the little music stuck into my head or whatever. But now I texted Big Cat. I'm like, I've been checking out this part of my take thing. Like on after football Sundays, like, you guys do a pretty good job. Like,
they're pretty good at what they do.
Not bad,
Speaking of, how about now? Am I crushing it on the mic?
Yeah, you're sounding better. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Phew.
It's just funny when I remember being a little kid and being in the car with my dad, and it was almost always sports talk radio or news talk radio. And a lot of times I would enjoy Mike and the Mad Dog. Nick knows what I'm talking about. And that was great growing up. But then there were sometimes I just didn't understand, how can you just listen to people talk all day? And now I get it. Like, because I listen to so many podcasts, and that's how I consume the majority of my information.
Over the weekend, I had a wedding over 5 hours away, and I drove each way. I was going to go just straight there and back, but then I saw too many dead deer on the side of the road. I was like, no, you better stay the night and get drunk. But yeah, 5 hours there and back. And I first, like, if you don't load up with podcasts, it like makes time fly when you're listening to a good one like 0 Block 30 or pardon my.
And just so everybody knows, not to do anything that's inappropriate, but we need to put this out there just because we know on this podcast, we always talk about safety is paramount and safety for cash too. We pumping and dumping, Kate?
Nope. He just went to daycare this morning with the milk I pumped. Pretty
boozy.
Pretty boozed up.
All right.
Yeah, between the reception and the after party, I ran up to pump real quick, and he's literally, I just got notified he drank 6 ounces. Hopefully they put him in the bouncy chair and let him party for a little bit, you know.
Notice
for more
Dirtbag Kate was back.
Kate stuff on High Chair, and so how to give you baby booze. That's cool. Round number 2, we have a little OPSEC because I saw an interview last night that absolutely blew my dick away. We're getting farm silly in the data front. And I had a little bit of idea like that they're selling data because that's just what they've been doing forever. There's a reason why every website has cookies and all that shit. But last night I was like, whoa. Round number 3, the Army doesn't want your body to hurt. And I wish the Marine Corps felt that way because my body is an absolute wreck. I know Kate's is too. Cons, your body a wreck?
No,
you're not, sir. Let's go to round number 4.
Right.
That's shit I don't like. Generals are admitting that advances in China have caught them off guard. I gotta be honest, I don't like that. You can't just come out and say we're caught off guard.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling, and it kind of gives away a little bit that we're not prepared. But they got these hypersonic
after the
weapons.
whole Afghanistan leaving debacle. I need you to start instilling a little more confidence. We're coming off a bye week. I need you guys to be doing a little bit more there, generals. And finally, Khan sat down with Dr. Amishi Jha to discuss different approaches to mental health and focus on attention and what's driving our mental cars. She is a fascinating woman who is very, very accomplished. I'm glad that Khan's got to sit down. I was supposed to. I actually read her entire book, like in prep for this interview. And then I had to go get my eyes cut open. So,
and they didn't even let you film it this time.
I know. What a bunch of cowards.
What's the point?
Probably they were all worried about this TRICARE budget, and then I'm going to sue them because you do have that right, I think, now to sue some military doctors, which I'm chomping at the bit to get some malpractice money.
I might need to get into that based on what happened to me on Friday. Not to make this about me. No, I told you guys in the chat. I was just sitting there.
Yeah.
I was in a Zoom. Yeah, I was in a Zoom. And then all of a sudden I came to and I was on the floor and Alex was standing over me.
And my head hit the wall. Boom.
I'm surprised that you weren't on a G chat because sometimes you can have that can happen when you're pulling extra G's.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So yeah, I got to go to the doctor. So when it was funny, you asked if my body's a wreck. I guess it might be a wreck in different ways. I don't know.
Maybe so. Maybe you just needed a little pick me up with our friends from Black Rifle Coffee. Because if you need some coffee, they're the best coffee in the biz. I heard our friends PFT and Big Cat talking about them this morning. They absolutely love it. They're getting mocha drunk over there with some mocha caffeine. PFT, he dabbles in various types of caffeine. Says it's the best caffeine that he's ever seen.
Whoa, that's surprising because I sit next to him. The man's highly caffeinated. This is a guy who's been to the
Rugby Sevens in Hong Kong. He's seen some caffeine in his day.
This is a guy who makes margaritas with Mountain Dew. So, he knows caffeine.
And we know our coffee too, because we drink that shit down, and 6 million cups have been drank down by people that were deployed, whether they be soldiers, law enforcement, medical workers on the front lines during this COVID pandemic. They've been having their coffee too with the buy a bag, give a bag initiative. It's brewed all over the place, including places like Tennessee and Utah. And they have brick and mortar shops open all over the place, including Niceville, which is very nice. It's just outside of my hometown. Shout out the Niceville Dolphins, even though we used to whoop the absolute dog piss out of them from my beloved J.M. Tate High School Aggies. Gotta love that. And Black Rifle Coffee. You can join their Black Rifle Coffee Club, have it delivered to your door. It's going to be the freshest possible from a veteran-owned organization. Go to blackriflecoffee.com/0. Use promo code 0 today. Get the freshest coffee in America shipped directly to your door. All right. So I want to start out because I was in traffic this morning, and I hate traffic. This usually my wife and I have a very solid plan. She takes McCartney to school. I pick McCartney up. So Friday afternoons, I get the ass end of that deal because people are trying to leave. It takes me forever to get there. Well, I get so angry when I see somebody like speeding, or they're run like a red light, or they don't signal while they're turning, and then they get pulled over. Because you know the moment that somebody gets pulled over, everybody's doing looky-loo shit. I've said for a long time that I think on main highways like 95, I-35, I-95, like when you're on these main highways, they should not be allowed to pull you over for like traffic violations unless it's extremely dangerous. Like if you're going 150 and like a 70, sure, pull them over because that's dangerous for everybody around. Drunk driving, sure, pull them over because that's dangerous for everybody around. Not signaling, you have a fucking tail light out or something like that, don't pull them over for that.
Right.
Just don't do it. Philadelphia, did you know this, Kate? Philadelphia passed a law, and it's going to in effect in 120 days, where the cops cannot pull you over for a minor traffic violation. They just take your license plates and they send you the moving violation in the mail.
Whoa. So I don't like that at all.
Why?
Because do you know how many traffic tickets I get out of because I have a gold PPA card, or they see that I'm a veteran?
Oh God.
Are you kidding me?
Oh my God.
Well, you're going to get out of it anyways, because eventually they'll rule all these unconstitutional, just like they did in Texas. Did you know that traffic light cameras are unconstitutional? That it's technically entrapment?
No.
Well, so wait, so the
you don't have
officer...
to pay for a single red light cam. You just ignore it. They can't send it to collections. They can't put points on your driver's license because there's no way they can tell that you were the operator of your motor vehicle.
That's a good
Like
point.
all those things, they just don't mean anything. Like they'll send you mail after mail after mail. You don't have to pay them.
So how does it?
Happens.
All right. So, but how does this continue to happen to people then? How
people are stupid because
Right.
they don't know.
I'm dumb enough.
They're ignorant. I won't say stupid. They're ignorant. And I act real cocky about this. I just found out this on Thursday. So.
I just found out about this 36 seconds ago.
Yeah.
Wait. So, but I'm not understanding how municipalities will continue to do this, knowing it's unconstitutional.
Because they put it into place before it was ruled on. So they had already spent all this money, and they're like, "Well, we'll keep sending them out and see if people see what sticks."
I have to tell you,
that's terrible.
When I worked at the Philadelphia Convention Center and down at the stadiums, I racked up because I didn't make that much an hour, and parking was so expensive that it often like cut my paycheck in half when I did the math. So I was like, I'll take the roll of the dice, see if I get a ticket. I racked up so many Philadelphia parking tickets in that old CRV of mine that they crammed. You know, the little center console, you open up the thing and there's.
I remember you showed me one time.
It was so packed full of Philadelphia parking tickets that it could no longer shut. There must have been like, dozens and dozens in there, tons of them. And my hope is now that I got rid of that car, they can't track me, right? Like my new car can't get towed in Philadelphia, right? So that
I don't think it crosses over.
Right? Am I crazy? I don't think it does.
I don't think so.
So I was like, fuck it. I'll just, hopefully I roll the dice and I'll get lucky. And that's what I did. I said, fuck them. I'm not paying these. So that's the way to go in Philadelphia.
Well, I had to, when I went to boot camp, I got a parking violation in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And whenever I went to go to boot camp, the recruiter does all these different checks to see if you have any type of warrants or anything with the police, like before you go to boot camp. And one of mine was I had like $150 unpaid parking ticket in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And it was from like 4 years prior. And they had like a warrant for my arrest for like missing court appointments and things like that to see the judge about this parking violation because it had been so many times. I ended up having to call them and be like, can you guys I'm just trying to go to boot camp. Can you guys just get rid of it? They're like, no, we're not going to get rid of it. You have to pay. I had to send a Western Union from my mom to pay this fucking traffic violation before I could go to boot camp. Outrageous.
That is a little ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. But so last thing about the Philly thing, I don't understand that. So the cop driving by will take note of what and then send you something in the mail instead of pulling you over. That's it. So there's
because really, like, you have to have probable cause to pull people over, and more people are starting to know their rights about what they have to say and what they don't have to say. I think because of social media, because there's all these different things where cops will come to your door and be like, I don't answer questions, and then like basically that's it. So they're not getting what they used to, and it makes it where things can escalate when they don't need to.
Right,
like why if somebody just doesn't put
puts
their
the police
blinker
in
on,
danger.
just fine them $50 or whatever it is, and then send it to their house.
Oh, I'm so nosy. I would love to be. So I'm assuming the police officer has to have a passenger in the car take a note of all this stuff since they're on the move. I would love to be the.
I think it's from the dash cam.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say I'd love to be the nosy one. Said, "Ooh, there's." I'd be a total snit. I get everybody.
Oh yeah.
Be a
I mean,
treat.
I would do. That's why people are like, oh, they have these quotas. Well, no police departments have those quotas. That's not a real thing. They don't have those. I would love to be a board cop and just giving out stuff to people that I thought just looked suspicious. Like not look like, and not like really going
I think
in.
that
I'd like
happens a lot.
Karens, like moms at Whole Foods. I'd be parked out at Whole Foods like normal cops do at bars, like waiting for people to get DUIs. Be like, oh, you think you're so special with your fucking quinoa, and join this ticket.
You know who's getting a ticket automatically for me if that's my job? Anybody with a Calvin and Hobbes Calvin peeing on something bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
You
tells you a
saw a
lot about the
dude
person.
Anybody with
by.
a Punisher bumper sticker, anybody with it on like a purple what are those awful pilot? No, PT Cruiser. If you're like a PT Cruiser with a
shame.
Punisher sticker.
I'll give you a nickel if you show me a PT Cruiser still on the road today. Those things are mostly extinct.
I just passed a purple one yesterday, and I was
Really?
like, I cannot wait to see who is driving this thing. And it was a little old man.
I remember
My
when those
buddy
things
Doc
came out.
that I'm going to speak at their Marine Corps ball, and we used to travel together a lot to do like Secret Service missions and things like that. And he hated PT Cruisers, and every time I because I was the senior member, I would make the the rental car reservations. I would always request for the purple PT Cruisers because that's when they were really popular at like Hertz rental car or whatever. And he would get so pissed when I pull up and be like, yeah, dude, we got another PT Cruiser, baby. Let's go.
And side note, can I say one more thing? It's fortuitous that you're talking about Philadelphia, Chaps, because we will be there next Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Time's flying for the Flyers Warrior hockey program. The
Oh, it's
NHL.
this Friday.
Oh my God. Is it this Friday?
Yeah.
Is it
We're in
this
this Friday?
November. Oh my God, we're November. It's this Friday. Yeah, so
Yeah.
Chaps will be in town and we'll be down in Philadelphia. We might go drive around for a little bit. I'll knock out one of the lights on the Buick. We'll drive around, get a ticket.
We're not driving. We're not driving around. We're not driving
Okay,
around.
fine.
The
Fair.
last time you had us drive around Philadelphia, you showed us some wall with a bunch of bottles on it. That was a huge letdown.
Anyway, Flyers
that was
Warrior
kinda rough.
hockey. It's all veteran hockee teams.
Oh, maybe we can go back to that restaurant where they have like the carnival ride
Okay,
seats.
shut the fuck up, guys. Every time I try and show them cool shit in Philadelphia, they poo-poo it.
I mean,
they're squares.
Cool. Like
No, we
No, it
really
is
like
cool.
the sandwiches that you got us. Those were good.
Thank you.
Over
The
by
roast-
the pier.
The Navy Yard. I took you to the
Mm.
Navy Yard for roast porks from the Knicks. Anyway, whatever. Spit and Chicklets will be there. Zero Block 30 will be there. Flyer Warriors hockey. It's all veteran teams across the nation. It's awesome. So I cannot wait to do that. And it's this week. What a treat. What a treat. for
That
me to
is a
find out.
treat. I'm looking forward to it. I
Yeah.
actually fly to New York as soon as we're done with this podcast. I'm looking forward to going up there and
Oh,
spending
what a
some
treat.
time. It is going to be a treat.
Kate, were you
Not as
unaware
big as
of
a
any of
treat.
this? That's
This
ridiculous.
just made my day.
She had
You didn't
no
know I was
idea,
coming,
Chaps.
Kate?
I thought maybe towards the end of the week I got a
Wow.
whole week.
Oh, that's the reason why
Wow.
we're recording early.
Oh,
Wow.
Because I got a flight.
wow. Okay.
Yep. Kate, I love it when Kate gets on the podcast and acts like she's not in the group chat where we
Right.
talk about all these things.
For all
Like,
intents
oh,
and
this is all
purposes,
brand new information.
listen, unless Kate is like responding right away, she's basically not there.
Oh,
I was
I
driving.
definitely know. I text Kate off to the side and be like, hey, just so you know, we're
He
recording.
I was driving 11. I drove over 11 hours this weekend and I was drunk.
Did you try any podcasts?
Did I try? Oh yeah. Listened to there's this podcast, no free ads for any other podcast, but it's called Something Was Wrong.
Mhm.
And it's like a 7-part series where each season it's like a woman who was married to a guy who she thought was a doctor, but it turns out after being married for 5 years, She
Oh,
finds
it's like
out
that
he had
one case that we studied or that
he
we
had
went
a
through.
totally
We didn't really
different
study
life.
anything, but we
Yeah.
went through.
Yeah. So it's like shit like that. It's like people in relationships who find out the person they were dating wasn't who they thought they were
That's
at all.
crazy.
Yeah. So this guy in the latest had like 6 different
In
wives.
some places, they
kids.
call that early enlisted marriage.
True. Yes, they do.
Mhm.
Indeed, they do.
So, real quick side note, Kate, I saw that you took a very nice family photo at the wedding you were at.
Yes.
I always kind of
Virginia
laugh.
looked lovely, by the way.
She
Yeah.
is gorgeous.
Well,
she is.
So that's what made me kind of giggle. It's like you always see people like, oh my gosh, you look just like your mom, or you look just like your dad, and I always just kind of laugh like, yeah, well, that's just how genes work and all. But it's just funny how when people say that out loud, it's almost like, yeah, no
I like
kidding.
that Zah screenshotted my Instagram post
Yeah.
without even tagging me, went on his Twitter and was like, everyone look at Kate's mom. What a beaut. I was like, thanks, Zah. She's lovely.
And she crushes Bud Heavies.
But
So,
heavies. Yes,
That's
she
her
does.
best redeeming quality.
She's a
mhm,
delight.
mhm.
Hmm.
All right, let's move on to round number 2. One of my favorite things about watching the late afternoon game is if I watch it on CBS is that 60 Minutes comes on. And the only time I ever catch any 60 Minutes episodes is right after football. If it's not football season, there is zero shot I see what happens on 60 Minutes, but I always kind of enjoy it. I think I'm just getting to that age because as we discovered last week, I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 next year. So I should be primetime 60-minute watcher. But yesterday, they had a segment where Anderson Cooper, he went to Israel and he was talking to this guy who wrote a book called Sapiens in 2014. And it's a global bestseller and it's turned into this whole new thing where he says that we are right now, this is going to be the last generation or two of actual Homo sapiens, that we're experiencing like an evolutionary process in the human species. And that's because of data. And what they're going to be able to do with data over the next 20 to 30 years is going to change the way that humans operate. And he said that the way that they farm data now, and that's the reason why they offer so many things at such a low cost, like Netflix, technically, with all the media that you can consume, Netflix should not be able to get by with only charging you $7.99 or $9.99, whatever, because there's just so much that you can consume on there that you don't have the money to, like, if you paid what it would normally cost without the bundle deal, it would be like $500-600 a month. Like you're not going to do that. And it's because they sell your data to different places. And he was saying that there's certain aspects of your life in the next 15 or 20 years that places like Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, they will know more about you than you know about yourself. And whenever he said that, I was like, fuck. And because the doctor, the actual like scientist that's researching all this, he was like, think about when you discovered, like he asked Anderson, he was like, well, when did you know that you were gay? And Anderson was like, well, I probably had some suspicions when I started at like 10, but by the time I was like 22, 23, I knew for sure I was gay. And he was like, well, if you put that in modern terms, Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, they're going to know you're gay by the time you're like 8 years old. They're going to know it. You're not going to know it yet. You're not going to have all that. But the way that you go through different things, they're going to be able to pick out your data and place into what. So then they're going to be able to show you advertisements. They're going to be able to show you different shows that's going to appeal to that process. And all of these other firms are going to want that information so that they can start targeting you. Yeah. And he said, eventually it's going to be such a place where you are determined by technology who you are going to be by the time that you're 25, 30 years old without you really cognitively doing it yourself. And whenever they were saying this, I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then they went further, dude. Like, listen to how far he goes, because he talks about the last sapiens is like this big movement that's going on. And he was saying with coronavirus, for example, that Israel signed a deal with the parent company behind Pfizer and for Israel to get all of the different vaccines first. Well, Israel and the company negotiated a deal that the company would get all of the biomedical data from all the people in Israel that are getting the vaccine. However, there's no identifying markers of who it was. Like there's no social security numbers or anything like that, but they still get all the biological data behind it. So then they could target an entire region knowing that they can do continued research on DNA traits, gene traits, and things like that. And he's like, now, if we're doing it for good and we're coming up with vaccines from this bio data medical shit, what if bad actors get their hands on it and say you want to take out an entire race, or you want to take out an entire ethnic group? You could target different biological weapons that only target certain aspects of your DNA makeup by that biodata. So then you're in complete control over what you release. And I was watching this like,
holy
fucking shit, man.
Yeah.
And he said that's the exact reason why. Because you remember, if we go back 10 years, when Facebook would buy like Instagram, or they would buy WhatsApp, when they bought WhatsApp, I was like, what the fuck is WhatsApp? I had never even heard of it. And they're like, we just bought WhatsApp for $75 billion. It's a program that started 5 months ago. You're like, why in the world? $75 billion for that? It's text messaging. Well, no, there's so much data behind it. And that's the reason why they want to have all that, because data is more valuable than money.
This is equal parts fascinating and scary.
It makes me want to move to the middle of the boonies and never give my son the internet.
Get off the grid. Yeah, just get off the grid.
That's terrifying.
Kate, honestly, like that's the next point I was going to make was I'm not necessarily overly concerned for us, because I think we're so indoctrinated in this now, and we know a life before technology, so we have something to compare it to. But anybody coming into the world who's just growing up with all this technology around them, they have no chance.
No, I disagree. I think even now there's enough in psychology, it's called spontaneous recovery, where you have a learned trait. And if you don't continue to do it, everything behind that falls away. And we manipulate that in dog training in spontaneous recovery. So if you have this spontaneous recovery, there's no shot our generation or even a generation ahead of us would be able to function nearly on the same level if you took away any of the technological advances. Like, you can't do it now. It's so ingrained into our society. You would have to reteach so many things like math, sciences, any type of navigation that you're going through. If you told me, like right now, all right, we're going to have to print off maps and you're going to have to get from here to New York, dog, like the likelihood that 99% of the population could do that now
no shot.
Is zero.
Zero. Done. This reminds me, the way you were saying it, like how they take a couple things that I Google or whatever, and they can build a whole portrait of who I am. It reminds me of like the serial killer hunters who are like, they see the way that I left the body at the scene, and they're like, she was a shy child. Her parents were divorced. She blah, 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 like brown hair, probably. Like it's almost like they're like building a sketch of like a serial killer sketch of who you are based off the things you do online.
I wonder though too, like if there would be some aspects of this though that would be positive and that would help us as a society.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like the way that the COVID vaccine worked, because they could map it and use the mRNA shit and like figure that out. This part is super scary because the guy is legitimately brilliant. And he said, well, do you think, Anderson asked him, do you think any of these tech moguls that are doing this, like Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, the Elon Musk, the ones that are primarily behind this, this really evolution? And he said, yes, but you are seeing that some of them are a bit afraid of their own power. They realize the immense influence that they have over the world and over the course of evolution, really. We've even seen some cases of people who are behind it have committed suicide because they realized what they were doing and how it was going to affect the world later on. And you're like, whoa.
Because think about this. I don't think any human is built to get to a point where they can fully wrap their brain around having that much influence over the world. Like over the weekend, I was playing golf with Lurch from Foreplay, and recently he had lunch with Michael Jordan. And I made the comment, what do you think that's like for Michael Jordan's psyche to know that just about everybody you come across, this is a seminal moment in their life, and you have that profound of an effect on everybody? Like, how do you comprehend that? So the same thing with Gates and Zuckerberg, to have this level of power, I don't know if they can get to a point where they fully appreciate that, and as a result, do the right thing all the time. Because
I think because they're so smart that like Zuckerberg, clearly, if you watch him speak and he speaks in public, there's something that is neurologically different about him. He is a neurologically diverse individual, and you don't have those level of ideas and creativity where you even imagine these types of things if you aren't that type of thinker. So I think that some of that puts a blocker in on what you see socially and how you interact with people, because your mind just works so unbelievably differently. It's like when Bill Gates comes through with a fucking grocery sack, like a cloth sack full of books. Like, oh, this is my reading for the week, and I'm going to remember every single thing that's in all these books. Right. You're not a normal human anyways. Like you are, you're operating on a different level of humanity than I'll ever even know. But this part that Yuval Harari is the guy's name, the doctor's name. This paragraph that he says here was, and I wasn't even high. Like if I was high and watched this, I might have just completely lost it and just cocooned up and not been able to operate for like a week. Listen to this shit. He said, maybe the biggest thing that we're facing is really kind of an evolutionary divergence. For millions of years, intelligence and consciousness went together. Consciousness is the ability to feel things like pain and pleasure and love and hate. Intelligence is the ability to solve problems. But computers are artificial intelligence. They don't have the consciousness. They just have the intelligence. They solve problems in a completely different way from us. Now, in science fiction, it's often assumed that these computers will become more intelligent and they will inevitably be able to gain consciousness as well. But actually, it's much more frightening than that, in a way that they will be able to solve more and more complex problems, even problems that their coders and designers didn't even imagine was possible. And they will have power over us to continue to solve these complex artificial intelligence algorithms to determine who qualifies for loans, global financing markets, moved by decisions made by machines, analyzing huge amounts of data in ways that their programmers didn't even understand. And he says that companies will continue to control that amount of data for the future. And the ones who do will absolutely control the world more than any governments could possibly imagine.
All right. Now I'm officially scared.
Because it's like computers are like, he went on to say that computers are going to make countries obsolete. Like that, because the global markets are going to be so intertwined. He's like, we looked at what the steel curtain would be, and we looked at this. He's like, now it's a silicon curtain. He's like, and that's the reason why China and the United States are in such data-driven markets to try to control it, because whoever wins that war that gets control of the data, whether it's China, America, Russia, whoever, the UN, that is going to be who controls the world, whoever controls the data.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And it's just kind of ironic that the guy wrote the book called Sapiens, because sapiens in Latin translates to wise. So you wonder, how wise are we? Or are we too wise for our own good?
Poignant.
Or are we too wise for our own good?
Well, right now, I also want to transition to a little bit of round 3, because we're going to get into some more high level thinking stuff. And if you need to take a little break and that blow your mind, maybe you should go check out our friends at BetterHelp, because BetterHelp will get your mind back into the right spot. BetterHelp is also giving free healthcare, or not healthcare, but free mental health therapy to Gold Star families by going to betterhelp.com/goldstar. And all you have to do is submit a little bit of paperwork that shows and proves that you are part of the Gold Star community. And once you do that, you'll be able to access it. And it's been amazing for me, like the BetterHelp therapy. I know Kate's used it too. My wife has used it, and everybody that I've talked to that has used it has loved it. If you want to give it a try and you don't have insurance that covers it, which a lot of people don't, this is a low-cost option that's going to really help you out. Go to betterhelp.com/0 and you're going to get 10% off, which is a great deal, because we are proud to partner with BetterHelp in the endeavor to get Gold Star family members therapy. I've had several reach out to me and say they're getting started or have gotten started already, and they are absolutely loving it. So once again, thanks to BetterHelp for doing that for our Gold Star family members. We appreciate that here on the show, but we also want you to get some help if you don't follow under that umbrella. So go to betterhelp.com/0. You're going to get 10% off. It's a fantastic organization doing fantastic things. Let's move on to round number 3, where they're trying, even though they're going to hurt us through our data, they don't want our bodies to hurt anymore. Kate, what do we got for round 3?
We got this article about bodies hurting. Yes. Great intro by me. So my sergeant's major right now, they hurt. Their bodies hurt. Colonel Philip Kinieri, the commander of 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 82nd Airborne, told Task and Purpose last week, I need to make sure that the next group of leaders and senior leaders in the Army don't feel like I feel physically, that they're healthy. I wish we thought this way when we were going up. The 4,000.
That's a new thought. In the past, I would say 5 years, we've seen that type of attitude towards training much more than in the past, because before it was primarily, I hurt, they're going to hurt. It's just the rite of passage.
Yeah, I'm glad that that's changing. So the 4,500 Soldier Brigade is part of an effort to address injuries early and give soldiers more access to physical and occupational therapy through the Army's Holistic Health and Fitness Program. It was just put into place last year. It focuses on total wellness, not just physical fitness, and urges mental and spiritual well-being, getting enough rest, eating well, and more simply, just taking care of yourself. Because how many of us, when I was lower enlisted in the Marine Corps, no sleep, nothing but energy drinks all day long, and then like booze, energy drinks, cigarettes, nacho cheese at the chow hall. But then you're doing seriously. I look at photos of myself from then. I had the Madonna arms. Like I was not ripped, but I like was defined.
Because you're doing stuff all day.
But like, because you're physically so demanding. But in the meantime, in my free time, I was treating my body like shit. And also you're wearing all that heavy gear all the time that, anyway, referred to internally as H2F, the Holistic Health and Fitness Program encourages soldiers to take better care of their minds and bodies, not simply push through the pain after injury. Yeah, pussy. Oh, you're going to go to sick call? You fucking pussy. And
which is valid.
Totally valid. And emphasizes learning how to physically train properly. And at least one brigade commander is hoping that with the kind of change, the next generation of Army leaders won't have the same kind of aches and pains as, you know, the rest of us do. I am completely fucked. My back is just fucking destroyed. There's
I've talked about how from my bedroom down to take the dogs out, there's like a little flight of stairs, maybe 10 steps. When I first get up in the morning, like 6:15, 6:30, it's the first thing I have to do is to take the dogs out to go to the bathroom. So when I first get out of bed and I'm going down in the morning, I'm like, it's like I'm the fucking 10 man and I need some oil can to get down the stairs. And I feel like I can't do it some morning. Like when it's cold outside and I'm not limbered up, I'm going to tear a hammy. I just know it. One of these days, taking my dogs out, tear a hammy. By the way, huge announcement, speaking of, and my wife didn't want me to say it, but I feel like I need to as a form of accountability because I think integrity matters. Gussie boy from heaven above, baby Dale woohoo, this weekend. Kill the baby squirrel.
Oh.
Primal instincts coming out.
Gussie
Gus
boy.
had no idea what he did was bad. I was sitting in here watching football. I hear my wife screaming outside. I run from my office outside. Gussie boy from heaven above, sitting there, squirrel draped across his mouth, happy as shit, thinks that he does something good. I tell him to drop it. He does. Poor little squirrel, dead as a doornail.
Oh,
Things are dying at my house left and right.
He didn't know.
We got spiders dying. We got rattlesnakes dying. We got squirrels dying. There needs to be a sign. Don't come on this property. You will die.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Not good at all. But keep going, Kate.
Yeah. So this is really cool too. This isn't across the Army yet, but I think this is brilliant. The 2nd Brigade has direct access to trainers and physical therapists. So the soldiers don't need to wait at a clinic or get referrals or blah, blah, blah. And they have nearly 24-hour access to care. So that'll help them train safely and effectively for the Army Combat Fitness Test, all sorts of other stuff. And I think that's really, really smart. It is the most physically demanding job that you could possibly have. I mean, we were doing 2-a-days pretty much almost the entire time I was in. And it is incredibly, it was common for us, they said, especially for women, my hips click now when I walk on things like sand, when I'm not on like steady ground on sand and stuff. They said it wasn't uncommon because you get how tall you are. They measure that when you go in. They said it was not uncommon for women to be a little bit shorter when they got out from the weight of all the shit they had on all the time.
Yeah, just compact you down.
The studies from women and veteran communities have been fascinating lately too. There's recently one that said that women that are veterans, 40% more likely to develop breast cancer.
They're
Why is
actually,
that? I have no idea. They don't know yet. They're trying to figure it out, but like comparatively to the normal civilization or the normal civilian population 40% more likely to get breast cancer.
Stay tuned. This week, I'm interviewing representatives from the Hunter 7 Foundation who focus on toxic exposures in the military. And what the things they are uncovering are wild and fascinating. And they're talking about pilots too, higher levels of cancer, them, all sorts of stuff. But hey, at least this is good. They're taking care of your joints a little bit better, which is a huge plus.
I think that this is going to be kind of a seminal moment for where we're at and how we take care of folks, because in generations past, when you come back from long conflicts, like what happened in Korea, what happened in Vietnam, and you have Agent Orange and things like that, it was very difficult to scientifically track that data points to lead back to a spot because science just hadn't developed to that point. Now that's not the case. You're going to be very clearly be able to identify where some of these things came from. And the government's going to be culpable. I would think they would have to be culpable.
They have to be.
What's going on?
I mean, you'd have to be.
You're saying that with burn pits now, now there's irrefutable evidence, and they're like,
well, as we saw with the interview with the VA secretary, there's irrefutable evidence, and they're still like, we got to find some more evidence.
We don't know,
despite there being a ton of irrefutable evidence. But you know what's interesting about this story is that it really, I think, the physical health of our military will only get better as these older generations, unfortunately, I hate to say it, age out, because most of them just won't see the error of their ways, because it's not the days of Rocky where you would wake up and pound 6 raw eggs. Like, there's all this science and medicine behind taking
Denzel
care of yourself.
Doesn't need to train you like in fucking Remember the Titans. You know,
I was just thinking, I would love to see the Facebook comments on this article from the old timers. As soon as they see the word holistic, they're probably like, holistic.
What is new age hippie shit?
But really, ultimately, this is the kind of approach that will actually make us way more ready for battle.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you guys
money.
about, because to this end, I think that people that probably the most difficult to get on board with this would be the senior NCOs, like the staff NCOs watching, because this is, if you don't have, as a staff NCO, they have hired out a lot of training, like gun training, a lot of weapons training to civilian instructors. They've hired out now personal trainers. Like, if you don't have tactics and physical fitness to oversee as a staff NCO, that's like 70%, 80% of your job is training this. So to give up that, because nobody wants to give up your ball. Like, this is your expertise. You don't want to give up that.
Yeah.
Like, if I was still in and I was like a kennel master, and the base and the provost marshal wanted to hire a civilian contractor to come in and be the kennel master that could stay long term, I'd be furious, because that's my job. Like, that's what I'm here for.
But the other thing, I think you have these younger people that just really do understand this better. Like the comparison I've seen a lot, and I'm sure you guys have seen it too. Have you seen the comparison of George Blanda to Tom Brady and what they both look like at 43? Now, granted, Tom Brady's the extreme because he has the means to really take care of himself. But when you just see the fact that Tom Brady is the way he is, and that's no other reason than the science and technology, and he's paid attention to it, and all this medicine and taking care of yourself.
Plastic surgery.
Plastic surgery, certainly. Yes. But you got to just can't be putting an ostrich putting your head in the sand and saying like, oh, let's just keep doing everything the way we've been doing it. Because clearly there's a better way. And if you are an idiot to that, and Chaps, to your point, if I was a senior NCO, I would just lean so hard into all this stuff. You always used to have the guys in the barracks who seemingly knew everything about weightlifting and which pre-workout to take. If you were a senior NCO right now, you should get real smart on all this stuff and not like reading Reddit forums. I'm talking about legitimately smart. And I think you'd gain so much respect from
you. Need to just start following the Liver King on TikTok. Have you guys seen the Liver King?
Is that the dude who? Yeah, I actually posted something about him the other day.
The guy who's like, I eat testicles.
Yeah.
And so
he's like a fucking action figure. Like,
he's a Norse god. He looks like a Norse god.
His body looks weird because it's like his abs pop out like biceps.
Yeah.
And he eats. He's like, hey, we got Liver King here. Let's see what I got for dinner. We got some liver with some maple syrup on it. We got absolutely raw bull testicles that I'm going to eat. We got the concoction, which is, of course, some whey protein and some other things thrown in. And then I'm going to eat some more liver. And then I got 18 of these beef patties that I'm going to eat with a couple pickles.
Chaps, I'll tell you what. based on your recent PB&J run that I regret to inform everyone has ended.
Two very different men.
But
Yes.
what I was going to say was, Chaps, I think you have the food discipline that you could become the new liver king. Just start eating really weird shit.
Well, I mean, that's what I did basically before I worked at Barstool. All I did was work out and eat. I mean, I was crushing all kinds of stupid stuff.
Can
And I
I
had
say
no idea what I was
something?
doing. I was like a Reddit guy.
There's a level of fitness that is attractive, but there's one part of your body that no matter what you do, it's gonna look the same. You cannot
dick.
work out. Your dick will always look the same. So to me, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice if you have that like Norse god body. Maybe when you were like a string bean, your dick was like, it was like, oh shit.
Should we
I
DM
wasn't
them and be like,
expecting
let's
that.
see your dick?
Yeah, we should.
Like,
but
oh,
do you-
that's cool. You got good hair. You got a good body. Let's see that cock of yours.
Do you see what I'm saying though? Like maybe your dick was really great and impressive when you were an average guy, but now that you're ripped and I'm expecting like a hammer with veins all over it, like like an arm coming
Like
but
a
it's
baby's
still gonna
arm or
be-
like a full
no,
blown arm?
not anymore. Just regular arm. But
Oh, just regular arm.
but
Like a little person arm?
Yeah. Yes. Like that. But to me now
Like
you're
one of
doing
those
yourself a disservice.
prosthetics where whenever you get below the knee amputation, but you put your foot back and you just flip your ankle around backwards so then you still have the hinge.
Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just saying now, if I 23-year-old Kate, blah, blah, I'm not going to be impressed by it. I'm going to be disappointed no matter what. There's a level of fitness where you cross that threshold where your penis will no longer be impressive and you're doing it a disservice.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you
PSA.
got one of those pumpkin cocks and you want to get it hard, make sure that you go with Roman swipes. They're a clinically proven way to last longer in bed. They're going to get you going. They're going to get you all veined up and cocked out, ready to rock out. Make sure that you go with Romans because they're going to send it to you in a discreet, unmarked package. But whenever you swipe it on, your package is going to be anything but discreet, my friends. It's going to be standing at attention like it's going to get reported into the new commanding officer of the Space Force. It's going to be 6 and centered right on your lady's grate. Can we stay? Okay. Talking about Roman helmets. Go to GetRoman.com/0. Get your first month for free for $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoman.com/0.
Center.
Anyways, let's move on to round number 4.
China.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about China, folks, because these damn generals, man. The older I get, we've talked about it with different congressmen and shit like that, like where you look at what they're doing and growing up, you think, oh, you're an elected politician for the federal government of the United States. You must be smart. Not the case.
No.
Like we're saying that's not the case. Maybe it's the same thing with generals. And I'm not saying that the generals aren't smart. They lack a little common sense from time to time.
Well,
like
then you see, like
you
you
can't
get a
go in
Michael
national
Flynn.
media and say, China surprises us.
That's true too. Yeah. So lots of different.
Mhm. So what's going on here? This is from the Associated Press. China's growing military muscle and its drive to end America predominance in the Asia Pacific is rattling the U.S. defense establishment. American officials see trouble quickly accumulating on multiple fronts. Beijing is expanding their nuclear arsenal, its advances in space, cyber and missile technologies, and threats to Taiwan. The pace at which China is moving is stunning, says General Hayton, the number 2 ranking U.S. military officer who previously commanded the U.S. nuclear forces. At stake is a potential shift in the global balance of power and has favored the United States for decades. A realignment more favorable to China does not pose a direct threat to the United States, but could complicate U.S. alliances in Asia. New signs of how the Pentagon intends to deal with China's challenges may emerge in the coming weeks from Biden administration policy review on nuclear weapons, global troop basing, and overall defense strategies. I feel like Cons and I have talked about this because you're not a West Wing person, Kate, where China is essentially like all the different topics that they talk about on the West Wing, where it's always the same, but it just kind of shifts around, like in how we view it. Like the same issues that they had 40 years, 50 years ago with China are the same issues that we're having now just more advanced, right? Like that, doesn't it seem that way?
Yeah, no, it just kind of morphs and adjusts over time. But the challenge there with that is that you don't lose sight of it and you don't just push it off like, oh, that's just China being China again. You need to take every threat as a serious one and treat it in such a way that you don't become susceptible to something actually happening. Because I think that's the pitfall that could happen, right? Because you're dealing with something and granted it's new administrations, it's new leadership, but when you're dealing with the same thing over and over and over again, there's complacency that sets in with a lot of it. And you're like, we don't really need to worry about that. They're never actually going to do anything. They're all bark, no bite. And I think that's when issues would actually arise. So you need to make sure you're still on top of your game.
But I think some of this could be them gassing China up a little bit, because I feel like, you know how if you have a CEO and they need to kind of get everybody motivated, they'll say, well, we got this threat coming up on the outside, even if it's not really a threat yet, in order to make money. Because if you're the generals here, you got to know that most of the public is going to be like, why is your budget increasing if we just stop the nation's longest war?
Well,
why do we need to have billions more added to your budget?
This is what I want to know, because this seems like a weapon that pretty much makes all of our weapons obsolete. And I think will completely change warfare and the way we do defense moving forwards is China's hypersonic weapons, where basically they can fire a nuke up into space and have it come back down anywhere in the world, these hypersonic weapons that they're working on. So like distance is no longer a problem. They can send something up into space and then direct it back down wherever the fuck they want. Is that's the way I'm reading this.
Yeah, that is what's happening with their new,
so
and they just launched it.
Do we have something like that? Like where's ours? Do we have that? What the fuck's going on there? I'm very curious.
But I don't think that really catches them off guard. Like that's what that doesn't happen where they have this test and they're like, oh, we had no idea that they had this capability. I think that they did know that they had the capability, and we do so much fear mongering as far as bolstering the defense budget more and more. Like if you looked at it and you said, if the president came out, no matter which president, was like, look, we haven't had a major international terrorist attack in over 20 years in the country. It's time that we really stop looking at terrorism as an existential threat to the United States. They're not going to do that, even though realistically the threat of having international terrorism take place on American soil is not very high. They're going to still say it's very high because they want the budget to continuously increase. That's what these generals want too. They can't say, yeah, there's a lot of news stories about China. China's no real threat. We're ready to go with whatever. They're saying, yeah, like, why would you not? Like it's like if you go into a business proposal and they said, okay, well, we need a lot more cars. Well, nobody that runs the fleet, the motor T manager, the motor T commanding officer is going to be like, we're actually good on vehicles. We don't need any more vehicles. We don't need any more maintenance. We don't need any of that stuff. We're pretty much set.
You know, the Pentagon war room that you see in movies where all the highest brass is sitting around this big fancy room.
And there's usually a lieutenant that gets to give his opinion. What the fuck is that about?
Right. Well, there's a coffee machine in there that is on the fritz, and they all have their eye on this fancy new espresso machine, not in the budget. So they're hyping up China, being like, oh no, we need more money to fight China, when they really just need a new coffee machine.
Yeah, that's all we need to give them. Just give them a couple new coffee cups. Give them some Black Rifle coffee, and then everything will be fine.
And China's not a problem anymore.
Maybe that's what's going on with China and Russia. Maybe they just have coffee headaches.
Probably. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Makes you think.
I'm not worried about China. I want to put that directly out there. I'm not nervous about China in the slightest.
All right. You know what then, Chaps? I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you in that belief, and I'm not worried either.
Not me. I don't want them hacking my stuff. I got a lot of
worst case that happen. I mean, even if they did do that and they had like this nuclear weapon, we have like 700 of them. Yeah, like seriously. Cool. You can drop it from anywhere in the world. We got 700 or 7,000.
Yeah.
Like we can end the entire human race if we wanted to. Like the nuclear deterrence thing is so fucking stupid. Nobody's going to come at America with nuclear weapons because we have 1 million of them.
Side note, one of the podcasts I was listening to in the car this weekend, this soldier, was old man now, was recalling.
Cut that, Nick. She's listening to other podcasts about military people.
I know.
Whoa.
Well, this fella, when he was a young 19-year-old soldier, they needed volunteers to go watch nuclear bombs explode at close range, like 2 miles from it. And naturally, he said all these soldiers were like, yes, I would like to see this up close. Fuck yeah. But they didn't realize. And so they would put them in these, what do you call them? Trenches. And like literally 2 miles from one of the bombs, he said was 3 times the size of the one used at Hiroshima. And they were only 2 miles from it, from the center of
it was
the
the
blast.
underwater ones, right?
No. This was in the deserts of Nevada.
Oh,
He
yeah,
said-
yeah, I did see something. I saw an article about this. Yeah.
He said they were given no eye pro, no ear pro, no nothing. Sometimes the trenches would collapse over them and they'd have to dig themselves out from being buried alive. But they went back time and time again. They were like, yeah, I want to go see another one. Like, holy shit, this is sick. But they didn't realize it. And then once the bomb went off, they waited a certain amount of time and they would get a call over the loudspeaker, now walk towards where the bomb was. And they would have like farm animals and buildings and all these like tons of livestock. And they made them go look at what had happened to the animals and blah, blah, blah. And they thought, it was called bearing witness. They thought that, and they would report back, here's what we saw, blah, blah, blah. They thought that was the study, was they needed the soldiers to explain what happened with the bomb. But the real study was
What happened to the soldiers?
Was what happened to them. And they were being observed as to how they reacted to the aftermath of these bombs. And then they all started having all sorts of physical health problems.
It was in the 50s, right?
It was, I think, in the 50s and 60s or something, probably the 50s.
Yeah.
Then the one guy, he finally reached out to be like, listen, I'm having all these problems, blah, blah. Oh, well, where we kept all your info at this warehouse in St. Louis burned down. So there's no record of, all the old uniforms.
And then some of the people that were involved, like the higher level, they eventually came out and they're like, yeah, it was pretty fucked up that we did that.
Yeah. And then Wes Craven wrote The Hills Have Eyes. And here we are today.
Yeah. But anyway, I just thought that was super interesting.
Super fucked up.
Kate, do me a favor. Stop listening to competitors' podcasts. Thanks.
Yeah,
I
Kate,
know.
how
I'm
about that?
sorry. But he said when the bombs went off, they had their eyes closed and their hands over their
Yeah,
eyes.
because that helps.
But wait, he said he could see the bones in his hands. That's how bright it was. Through his eyelids, through his hands, he could see the bones in his hands. Crazy. Anyway.
And if you want to listen to more of that, that's the podcast called Son of a Boy Dad with Rome and Little Sasquatch on the Barstool Sports platform as well. Incredible stuff done by them as always. If you need a deep dive about anything, including nuclear weapons, always check out Son of a Boy Dad. All right. Let's move into Kans's interview that he did. Here it is.
All right, joining us now on Zero Blog 30 is certainly an interesting guest. Dr. Amishi Jha, author of Peak Mind, Find Your Focus, Own Your Attention, Invest 12 minutes a day. Dr. Jha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here, Connor. Call me Amishi, please.
Okay, Amishi, great, fantastic. We're already on a first name basis. We're basically best friends. I love it. Okay. So I had the opportunity right before we jumped on earlier today to watch a TED talk that you gave, and something really jumped out at me, and that is that the misconception that we only use 10% of our brains. I think this is one of those things that everyone just takes as fact, like, possession's 9/10 of the law. One of those things where everybody hears like, hey, we only use 10% of our brains. And you're saying that's not true.
No, absolutely not true. We use 100% of our brain. The brain is just such a metabolically expensive thing for the body to deal with, and all of it is used. So don't believe Bradley Cooper. He said 20%. Don't believe Morgan Freeman. He said 10%. We use all of it.
So where did that trope then come from? Why is it that we believe that?
It's kind of a mystery. There are lots of different views on how it came about. I mean, to me, it's less important of where it came from and more important to let people know it's wrong. And part of the reason that that's so important is that we start getting a sense that, all the capacities that the brain has, we already have.
Mm-hmm.
And that just like training the body to maximize our physical wellness, we can train the mind to optimize our mental wellness.
Mm-hmm. And how do we go about optimizing that? You talk about attention being the driver. So how do we go about driving that attention?
Yeah, well, so first we got to kind of understand what attention is before we can even talk about why we'd want to bother training it and why it's so important. And so the first thing to say is it's extremely powerful. Probably if I asked anybody listening to this podcast and ask, do you think your attention is in great shape? Most of us are going to say, no, I can barely pay attention. It's sort of this modern crisis we're feeling, like we're distracted. It feels like we're always in this kind of fog. There's always a million things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, or at least our minds are going a million miles a minute. That's the thing, right? So the first thing to say is that none of us are probably feeling particularly expert at our attention. Yet, I'm a brain scientist. I study attention. And what I know is that it's one of the most powerful things that our brain does. And it developed to help us with a very big problem that the brain had over the course of evolutionary history, which is the world is complex. There's so much out there, and we can't take it all in.
Mm-hmm.
So attention allows us to sample parts of the world so we can kind of, in a more fine-grained sense, get a real picture of what's going on. And we do this in multiple ways. We can do it by zooming in, kind of like I always talk about it as like a flashlight, so that you can, if you're in a darkened room and you had a flashlight, it'd be a really handy tool. You can see what's going on in that part of space where it's directed. Same idea with attention. So that even though right now, the lights are on and I'm looking at your face on the screen, I'm focused in on the face, everything else is kind of a blur around me. So
Mm-hmm.
even when the lights are on, so to speak, it allows us to get more granular information. And it ends up that whatever we pay attention to kind of recalibrates, adjusts the way the brain functions. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
very, very powerful thing. But there are things that make it vulnerable. Things like stress and threat and poor mood. And I know that a lot of your listeners are military service members or,
Mm-hmm.
or either active duty or veterans or potentially first responders. And those are the communities that we actually work with in my lab. The reason is because given that attention is so powerful and so vulnerable, I got very interested in working with professionals for whom they have to do their best work under the most difficult circumstances. And so that's a puzzle. It's like if this thing that you have, this precious brain resource of attention, you need it for so many things, but it's going to become compromised in certain circumstances. And those happen to be the job description that you hold. What are you
Right.
going to do about it?
Right.
So that's what we've been pursuing over the last 15 years or so, is solutions to train the brain, which I think
Yeah.
is what you were getting at.
Yes, it was. And when you say train the brain, to me, that sounds as though you can enhance how your brain functions. So is it possible to drive that attention and make a particular person's attention drive better in those stressful situations? Or is it whatever I'm born with, that's what I got and that's what I have to deal with?
Thankfully, it's the first thing you said.
Okay,
Or else we
good.
wouldn't have much to talk about. Like,
Yeah.
good luck, Connor. Good luck. Whatever you got, you got. No, it's just like the body. I mean, you know this, as given your history and expertise being active duty. We can train the body. In fact, we know this so well that it's required. It's required to reach a standard and maintain that standard every day.
Mm-hmm.
But what I say to a lot of the military leaders and colleagues that I deal with is like, the mind is just as important. In fact, it's probably more important than having physical excellence in many circumstances. Why are we not training for it? And I look back at my own field, and the question of why aren't we training for it really comes down to we don't know how. We didn't know how to train for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the good news is, yes, it doesn't really matter where your starting point is. We all have differences in our attention. This sort of flashlight idea is only one of the main ways we pay attention. There's other ways we pay attention. And what we've found is a couple of things. First of all, like I said, no matter how great your attention is, if you experience stress, threat, poor mood over a long period of time, your attention is going to decline. I don't care what your set point is, it's going to. And no matter how great your attention is to start, we're finding that you can train it to protect against that. So a lot of our studies, we involve active duty service members who are getting ready to be deployed.
Mm-hmm.
And we ask them to participate in our research in the kind of preparatory window for about 4 to 8 weeks. And we train them. We offer the kind of training tools that we can talk about. What we find is that when they practice these exercises that we give them, they can stave off that degradation. They can actually stay stable,
Mm-hmm.
which is very exciting. And most of that work was done with conventional forces. So we worked with Marines, we've worked with Air Force, we've worked with conventional Army. And then we actually did a project with the special operators. And it goes to the question that you were asking, like, can you, if you have a certain kind of excellence in this capacity,
Mhm.
maybe, some people are great at it and some people are not. The first, we were curious about that because maybe because of the selection process, a lot of special forces are selected because they already have great attention.
Right.
And in fact, we found that what we found is that, yeah, at baseline, their attention was a little bit better. And unlike a lot of the other groups that we work with, not just military, but even civilian first responders, for example, under high stress, because these special forces participants were actually also pre-deployment, they didn't degrade. They stayed
Hmm.
stable over time. But what we found is when we offered them the same training exercises, they actually got better than where they started,
Yeah.
even under high stress.
Well, is it a nature versus nurture scenario where if you're already getting somebody from the special operations community and maybe they've been exposed to certain incidents or certain training that the average military member hasn't, are they already having completed some of this work unknowingly?
It's possible. It's possible that probably, and there's probably dispositional differences too. Some people can orient their attention in certain ways and not others. I don't know yet exactly what it is that drives. Uh, it's a complex picture is another way to put it. Not that I
Sure.
don't know. It's a complex picture, but the thing that is consistent across everybody is there is vulnerability. There is vulnerability. I mean, even if they don't show it on our objective metrics of attention, if you ask them about their mood or their experience stress levels, they go up under high stress.
Mhm.
So everybody's vulnerable, but the other exciting piece is no matter what the starting point, people can get better and can protect themselves.
Hmm.
That's the hopeful part, is
Right.
that there is something you can do about it. It's not just what you're born with.
Right.
And which is sort of a game changer in the way we think about even military training, because what that means is probably you shouldn't just be focusing on the body and exercising it as you're preparing for any big event, or all of us in our lives. Probably you should be thinking about doing the same thing for the mind, and
Absolutely.
frankly,
I
that's what
mean,
motivated me to write the book. Is I
yeah,
wanted
I
to
mean,
give more people that opportunity.
just about every facet of life. I mean, this isn't prehistoric times where it was just basically survival of the fittest physically. It's like you have to think through various problems no matter what you're doing, whether that's the military, first responders, or even a high powered executive. I think have to
Exactly.
uh, you know um, approach that in that way. And I'm kind of curious, and I want to get into the tools that
Yeah.
you mentioned, but before that, I want to understand, when we talk about the starting point, do you find that the starting point is a little more cloudy for folks of a certain age? And the reason I ask this is because I think of myself, and now I have a phone in my hand every day. It takes my attention every day. And the example I think of is 10 years ago, I would go into a movie theater, I'd put my phone in my pocket and I'd watch the movie and I put my attention on that movie. Now, if I were to go into a movie theater, I have to consciously think, like, don't look at your phone.
Yeah.
So has there been just a collective decline in attention? So you're even starting at a lower baseline now with
Yeah.
whoever you study?
It's such a great question because it certainly feels like it. It certainly
Mhm.
feels like we're more challenged now. But the reality is, evolutionary change doesn't happen at this time scale. And when we
Mm.
looked at people and tracked attention in these very, objective laboratory tasks, it's the same as it's been for as long as we've been measuring attention. There's nothing wrong with our attention. Our attention spans are not shorter. But here's the
Mm.
thing, what you didn't have 10 years ago that you have now is a phone that gives you access to the world instantaneously.
Mhm.
So your options of what you can do with your attention are much, much, much more
Got it.
enticing, right? And so, we talked about this kind of capacity to pay attention like a flashlight a moment ago. Well, it ends up that flashlight you can direct willfully. You can decide where to point it, but it gets yanked around too. And the kinds of things that pull our attention are also things that are part of our evolution, things that are threatening, fear-inducing, self-related. You might even say like kind of sex, drugs, rock and roll, anything kind of exciting and novel and innovative.
Mhm.
Those are the things that pull us. So now what you're carrying in your pocket is something that is an attention grabber.
Sure.
So it's not that you can't focus. It's that if the movie has a lull in it, maybe I have more fun things to look at on my phone than the movie. And we're constantly gaming that. And that's another thing the brain does. We're always looking for what are called opportunity costs. Is the feedback and the reward I'm getting in this moment enough of the reward that I could get if I were doing something else? And in some sense, boredom is our cue that we're not getting as much of a reward that might be possible for us somewhere else. So it forces us to have that edgy feeling where we want to shift our attention, but doesn't mean that we're not capable of paying attention.
That's fascinating.
If you walked into the theater and I took your phone from you, I said, sorry, but this is a top secret movie and we can't have anybody having any idea of what's going on in here. So we need everybody's phones. You probably wouldn't have as much of a pull because it's off the table. It's not even
right.
But we can't do that. And most people aren't going to take away our phones. So we've got to figure out solutions in this modern world with these pulls on our attention that make us feel so fragmented. We've got to train our mind to better advantage ourselves.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that makes so much sense. It's because when I do put my mind to focus towards something, I do feel like I have that ability still. It's not like I lost that ability. It's still there. So it's just a matter of availability, I guess, of all these other attention grabbers. So you mentioned the solutions. So what are some of the solutions to be able to refocus our attention?
Yeah, so that's the thing. If there's another thing that we should probably talk about really quick, even if we had no technology luring us and we were alone by ourselves and we decided with nothing getting in our way, we're going to focus on something, we'd probably have some challenges. Because we would wander away. Our mind would wander away. And I'm sure you've had this experience. I know I have many times. You're reading a book. You get to the bottom of the page.
Yeah, like, wait, what?
No idea what's going on. And it might have been like minutes past. And your eyes have been moving. But you're like, it's literally the bottom of the page cues you into, I have no idea what I just read.
Right, I got to go back. Because
I got to go back. And you might end up in the same place again.
Yes.
So that is another aspect of our distractibility. It's not just the external distractibility, it's the internal wandering. And it ends up, and I talk about this in the book, about 50% of our waking moments, our attention is not in the task at hand. Our attention is wandered away somewhere else, even without accounting for external distractions. So now that's what we're up against. We're up against a world where the technology options are ample, and we're saturated with all the lures and things that can pull us, and our own minds have this propensity for distraction, and the first thing I want to say is that means it's like not your fault if your mind tends to wander. It's just the nature of the mind. It's not you in particular. I'm not saying you, Connor, but I'm saying people.
The collective you, sure.
Yeah. But it's still a problem, because when we wander away and we want to be reading or we want to be writing or we want to be talking and we're not able to stay still, we can make bad decisions, we can miss information, it can be consequential. And so, but what does that wandering actually do to us? What it does is, in some sense, we call it, kind of broadly speaking, mental time travel. If you're sitting there and your mind is not on the words you're reading on the page, it probably went to the past. You're rewinding your mind, traveling back to the past. Maybe some episode that just happened came up in your mind, or you're fast forwarding so that you're thinking about the next thing you're going to do. You're not here right now, and you're not on the page in that moment. And so essentially that same flashlight was with you in the past or is with you in the future, and you're missing the here and now. So the training solution, we knew, again, kind of going back to taking you for a field trip into my lab, we'd have to train people to figure out how to keep their attention in the here and the now. Like, how do you train people to show up, pay attention? We've been hearing that phrase since we were little kids, like, pay attention. Right. It doesn't work. Just saying to yourself, pay attention, show up right here. It can maybe work for a few seconds and then we're off, like doing our mental time traveling again. So we needed something that could withstand these tendencies of mind. And the solution that we ended up coming to realize is most beneficial really, really surprised me. I'll just say that. It's something called mindfulness meditation training.
Okay.
And mindfulness training, is this a term you've heard before or you've talked about before?
I've heard being mindful, but never mindfulness training. So I'm interested to hear more. Yeah.
So mindfulness training, again, it comes from sort of the world's wisdom traditions. We teach it in a way that doesn't require any worldview. But the term mindfulness actually means paying attention to our present moment experience without a story about it, without reacting to it.
Mm.
So it's like keeping the flashlight in the here and the now without editorializing. It's like
Okay.
just getting the data of the here and the now. And we can train for that. So the kinds of training exercises we give, we use stimuli, let's just say, that are happening and unfolding in real time, that we don't have to control, that we can just take our flashlight and watch them.
Okay.
And that's the goal. So for example, just to kind of dig in of what a mindfulness exercise would be, one of the ones I describe in the book, which comes again from a lot of different studies and a lot of different background, is something called the find your flashlight practice. And it's really talking about that attentional flashlight, because oftentimes we're who knows where, we have no idea. And if
Mhm.
you don't know where you are, the chances of getting back on track are basically zero,
Right.
right? It might be when you get to the bottom of the page, or you somebody you're talking to is like, "Are you listening to me?" Then you're like, "Oh shoot, I'm not here." But most of the time, we're not catching ourselves doing that. So what we ask people to do is just for a few minutes a day. The instructions are just sit down, decide to do this seriously, like you would a physical workout, and notice yourself breathing. That's the first thing. You're not controlling the breath, it's just happening at its natural pace. So this is not box breathing. This is not some kind of yogic breathing. Those are all great things to do, but that's not what I'm talking about here. Breath is just a handy anchor. It could be anything. You notice yourself breathing, take that flashlight and point it towards something that's prominent in your breath related sensations. For some people, it could be sort of the coolness around their nose, or maybe their abdomen moving in and out, whatever it is for you for this short period of time. And if you've never done it before, I'd recommend start with a minute, maybe 2 minutes.
Although a minute, 2 minute is not a long period of time to be doing this exercise that you're describing, I feel like that would feel like forever.
I've never seen so many big, brawny, tough looking dudes lose their minds when I told them that they should focus on their breath for a minute. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it is a tough thing. This is a group of Marines that we worked with, actually. So that's the instruction. Focus on breath related sensations. Keep the flashlight focused there. The next part of the instruction, when you notice your mind has wandered away from breath related sensations, gently return the flashlight back. So it's essentially 3 steps: focus,
Mm-hmm.
breath, notice mind wandering,
Mm-hmm.
time traveling away, and then redirect. And that's what a lot of our military colleagues call the mental push up, because you are now engaging and exercising these 3 aspects of attention, so that now you're better able to direct your attention to what you want it to go toward.
Mm-hmm.
You're noticing when it's not on the thing much more rapidly. Like, it doesn't take you 20 years and, 20 seconds and like having a full on fantasy of what you want your next vacation to be like, to realize, oh my gosh, I'm not even listening to what my partner's saying right in front of me. Right.
Right.
Like, just,
Right.
it doesn't pull you away quite as much because you're monitoring, and then getting better at getting back on track more
Mm-hmm.
quickly and swiftly without beating ourselves up that we were lost in thought.
Sure. So how do you though then reach, you mentioned a group of Marines or any military group, the military by and large is a younger demographic. And again, it goes back to what I was saying, how younger folks now have all these stimuli in their life that they're used to, but also the brain is a very difficult thing to understand. I mean, you spent your life's work, and you could tell us better than anybody that it's a very difficult thing to understand from my perspective. How do you convince a group of young members of the military that this is important? Because, right, like if I go to the gym and I work out, I can see the physical change in my body. I can see that I ran a faster time on the PT test or what have you. How do you convince younger people, and in particular, folks that are listening right now, that this is something that they should focus on?
Well, the first thing is, do you want to be better at performing as a service member? Do you want to be less prone to distractibility so you miss critical information, so that you're not as situationally aware? Do you want to be flying off the handle? The answer is no, you don't want any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And you certainly don't want your battle buddy to do any of those things. And you don't want your leader to do any of those things. We understand that when our attention gets compromised, we become more illogical. We become more reactive. We become more disconnected. We know that. But what we don't know is what to do about it. We could write people off and just say, oh, that person's just, not a clear thinker or a reactive leader. What I'm saying is all that may be true, but we can actually train ourselves to be more discerning, to be less reactive, to be more connected. And I think people understand that. In fact, I would say the younger service members, in fact, we did a project with boot camp, basic combat training, and we found that they were very open to it. I
Hmm.
think living in the modern world with the technological challenges, I mean, we all feel it, but I think younger people feel it. It's like it's
Sure.
hard to put down your phone. It feels bad when you, in the middle of the night, feel like something's vibrating and you're like, "Oh, it's my phone," and it's not your phone. Your phone's
Hmm.
dead.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
so these are not. It's not like us older adults are suffering, but nobody else is. We're all in it together in some sense. But what surprised me was how easily they were up for trying it. I loved that. There was like an openness for giving it a try. And I've learned that more and more in my time working with service members is if it advantages your performance, your success, your ability to be a service member, you're going to do it.
Hmm.
There's a kind of a culture of wanting to be the best you can be. And it sounds sort of
No,
trite,
you're
but
right though.
it's
You're
actually
absolutely
true.
right. Yep,
So why
you're
wouldn't I
absolutely right.
want to give it a try, especially if it's not going to take me days and days and weeks? It's going to take me, what, 12 minutes a day? I'm going to
Right.
try it.
And you can do it anywhere. You don't need a gym full of equipment to do this. You
You
could do it
don't need it.
anywhere you're sitting.
Exactly. And I'll tell you that when we have run now studies where we're not just looking at laboratory measures of attention like the things I do, but we're actually looking at marksmanship scores and marksmanship under stress, for example. And we're finding that people are better at shoot no shoot drills when they've practiced versus when they haven't.
Wow.
That makes it much more compelling. Oh, it's going to affect my performance. Pass rates are higher. I want that. It's going to advantage me.
Right, right. That's interesting. Okay, so clearly there's advantages for folks who are currently in the military with their performance, and that's very evident. And it makes a lot of sense. What about for veterans that are removed from military service and might be dealing with post-traumatic stress? They might be
Yeah.
dealing with depression or any number of
Yep.
ailments. How can this help them, and how would they go about doing it?
Well, the first thing I'd say is, again, if you are struggling with a mental health challenge, get professional advice, get guidance. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a therapist, and I'm not a medical doctor. So everything I'm saying is really regarding what we know from research, not any particular individual. It's just sort of the statistics. But here's the thing that we know. So, for example, in the context of, let's just say, depression, oftentimes we think of depression as tied to the negative content people can experience. But another way that we know about depression is that it's an attentional disorder. What happens is that our flashlight gets stuck on negative or depressogenic content. We get lost and don't notice that we're stuck. We end up in ruminative loops or catastrophizing, and we don't know what to do to get out of it. We see we're in that moment. Oftentimes we don't, but let's say
Mm,
we see that we're in that moment, and we're like, I don't want to be thinking about this over and over, but I can't help myself. I can't step out of it. And what this same kind of training, mindfulness training, allows us to do in those moments is get some distance. Because remember what I was saying, we only have one, I wasn't saying your flashlights of attention. We've got one flash.
right.
So
Yeah.
we're either in the movie, we're seeing it, we're reliving it over and over again, which leads to not just depression, but anxiety and active trauma being kind of reignited. But if what we can do is take a distanced view. So remember, when I was telling about the practice, I was talking about focusing, noticing, and redirecting. How do we notice where our mind is? We notice by kind of taking a bird's eye view and saying, what's going on right now inside Amishi's head? Oh, Amishi is actually not paying attention to the breath. She's thinking about lunch, or she's thinking about this conversation she just had. We kind of take that third person perspective, even talk to yourself
Mhm.
quietly, silently, and say, identify what's going on, get the data of the moment. Now, in just that act of shifting your mind to that noticing mode, your flashlight is now all of a sudden over here looking at you instead of being so immersed in the negative content that you're lost in it.
Mhm.
That distance provides a lot of opportunities for choice. First of all, it kind of loosens up the hold that the negative content can have. And you can start evaluating, like, you know, are these thoughts that I'm having, are they facts or are they thoughts? And one of the things that I do encourage a lot of people to say, not just veterans and service members, but all of us, regardless of your profession, is to remember that just because the brain pumps out a bunch of thoughts doesn't mean they're true, and it doesn't mean that they're real. But we forget that. We think if the mind thinks it, it must be reality. So taking this kind of distanced view and actually watching the mind, you can now, just like if you were watching your kid say something to you or your partner say something, you'd be like, you know what? I don't think I agree with that statement. Like that doesn't, I saw what went on. And I don't think that's true. That perspective you can have with yourself to be like, well, that's one orientation toward this very difficult content, very sad or disturbing or frightening content that might have arisen. But I'm not in that moment right now. I'm here right now with my family. I'm here in this moment, grounded, sitting in this chair. And it kind of changes your opportunity to deal with the content with more objectivity and less fusion. You're not like so stuck with it that you can't see it.
Yeah. But how do you get beyond the barrier of people's skepticism? Because I think what you're talking about makes complete sense. Absolutely. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. But in practice, if you're telling someone to exercise the tools that you're talking about right now, and you're talking about in your book, Peak Mind, how do you get beyond what I would imagine is just a certain level of skepticism by a lot of folks?
I mean, I'll tell you, I wholeheartedly understand that skepticism because I have it. I mean, you look at me, I'm an Indian woman talking about meditation, like, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, she's probably like born with it and been around it her whole life. Yes, I was born with it and around it my whole life, and I thought it was complete bullshit. I'm sorry to use my French there.
No,
but,
you're fine.
I
Trust me, my co-hosts say a lot worse. Trust me.
But the reason I thought I was so skeptical was because it comes from practices that are part of a culture that had a lot of other things that I didn't agree with, in particular, some particularly sexist views about what women can and can't do. So there's a part of me that was just like, yeah, no, not for me. And I'm like, and plus there's no evidence that this stuff does anything. This is just like, I'm glad my parents like to practice it because it helps them feel calm and peace, but it doesn't really, we don't think it does anything. And when I started out this work in the early 2000s, the term mindfulness was not something I would expect you to have heard of. But we have since then been able to conduct a lot of studies, take it from this kind of cultural practice to interrogate it as a brain training tool in the lab. And now we can look at it with objective measures. And when I started seeing in my own lab and many other labs that, oh my gosh, not only is it changing performance, improving performance, but it's changing brain function, that makes me excited and makes me want to do something about it. So unlike going to the gym, I can't see my attention getting better. But if you come to my lab and I look at your brain, I see the structures of the networks tied to attention getting stronger and better. So in some sense, seeing is believing. And we've seen this not just once or twice, but we've seen it in study after study after study over the last 10 or 15 years, which makes me overcome my skepticism and being willing and open enough to try it. And that's what I would say to the service members that that resist the programs. And we're doing all this in the context of research. Those that resist us, that think we're full of it, that don't care and don't practice, they don't benefit. They actually, we evaluate them. They're the ones that don't benefit. The ones that actually say, you know what, I'll be open to this. And frankly, it's very interesting. We were talking about veterans. Those that tend to benefit the most, or practice the most, I should say, are those that were deployed the most. It's like they knew through their prior deployments, like their tools were not up to the task of what they had to handle. So they were open to new tools. And when they practiced, they benefited.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you're right. And I think it's just like anything with the brain when you think maybe therapy, because there aren't necessarily, like, obviously you talked about some very objective results that you can now point to, and that's very helpful. But I think that's part of the skepticism of therapy and anything with the brain in general, is that you can't see it. But then talk to anybody, especially veterans, prior to seeing someone and talking and having therapy and post, and like, wow, I really feel a lot better. And it's just that little bit of a hurdle. Once they get over it, they can really see the benefits. So you've written this book, you've created these methods. What is the next step in mindfulness, in driving that attention?
Part of my interest was in getting the word out. We've now worked with many different communities of people, including, like I said, service members. We just published a project with military spouses, first responders, athletes, business professionals, teachers. I mean, the list, medical and nursing students, like the list goes on and on.
Mm,
But I wanted it to really be able to be understood by people that may not fall into any of those categories, or in this stage of their life, they may not feel like they're particularly high stressed. But the reality is, if we can't live a life without stress, threat, and poor mood, and the ups and downs of life are going to have an impact on us, plus all the stuff we talked about our current crisis of attention because of our technology.
mhm.
So for me, one of the next steps is letting people know, um, I didn't come up with these practices. What I was able to do is study them to understand that it's maybe not BS and maybe it actually is doing something. And then what we've done in the lab is hone them so that you don't have to go off on some kind of 2-month mountaintop retreat to get a benefit. You can do 12 minutes a day, just like you might get in a 30-minute cardio session
Mhm.
and get benefits. So it was finding the practical, actionable solutions that I was excited about. The other thing that we're doing now that I actually think is really probably the most exciting next step is we're getting kind of champions within communities to help us make it more accessible. So with firefighters, there's already a culture of like helping each other out, even in the military. You've got battle buddies, you've got squads, the notion of us leaning on each other is already there. So what we're interested in doing is train people that already know the life, the challenges, and
Mm,
the veteran community is the same way. That other people that have gone through the kinds of experiences you've gone through understand you in a way I certainly couldn't because I haven't lived that life. So having people that can train other people to benefit is sort of the exciting next step for us, and we're
sure.
making some traction doing that. So
Yeah. Train the trainer. Cause yeah, I mean, I think part of that skepticism in any community, right? If you get someone like yourself versus, oh, well, this is my squad leader or my platoon sergeant. If he's telling it to me, then I might be more apt to buy in versus some
well,
person with a fancy doctor title
title,
that I've never met before and who
right?
knows
But
who
it's
they
kind of
are.
it's interesting because on the one hand, it's not even just the buy-in that it helps to have somebody that knows your life experiences. It's that they can point to exactly the moments that this will be helpful.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be helpful when you're trying to pass your weapons qualification and you've got like the jitters, or you can't
Hmm.
sleep at night because you were on patrol and something terrible went down and now you're amped. Like they can tell you the moments that it's going to come in, and they can remind you when those moments arise to practice these things to benefit.
Yeah, gosh, it really is interesting. It's fascinating. The book is called Peak Mind. You're going to invest 12 minutes in your day and you're going to drive your attention to heightened performance. Dr. Amishi Jha, thank you so much for joining us. Where can folks find you if they don't beyond just reading the book?
Oh yeah, I invite anybody to go to my website. If you can remember my first name, 6 letters, AMISHI.com. That tells you all about the work we're up to in the lab these days.
Fantastic. Well, Amishi, it's great to meet you. It's great to talk to you. It's great to learn more about the mind. I think the mind is one of those things that no matter how much time is spent on it, we won't ever know everything about it. Is that fair to say?
Maybe, but we're getting solutions that are actually helping people today. So that's also important to
Fantastic.
remember.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If I don't give a TED talk at some point in my life,
Yeah, you failed.
what's this whole thing been about?
Nothing. Nothing. Yeah. She was a very fascinating individual talking about stuff that I had never considered, but made all the sense. You ever find that when you talk to somebody who's like super smart and they point something out and you're like, wow, how did I just never realize that before? And then you realize, well, it's because I don't have a doctorate in anything. It makes complete sense, everything she said in that interview. But
That's
it
kind of
never
how I
occurred
felt
to
listening
me.
to that dude with Anderson Cooper. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you kind of know that, but once somebody susses it all out and lays it all out in front of you and like puts it in a nice little pile, you're
Right.
like, whoa,
Right.
whoa. All
What
right,
would your
let's
TED
move
talk
in.
be on, Chaps, if you had
What's
to give
that?
one? What would your TED talk be on if you had to give one?
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
Peanut
maybe
butter
data.
jelly.
I feel like I'm a big time expert now after
Yeah.
round one.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be good. I don't know what I could give a TED talk on. Oh, by the way, before we move into, well, we'll actually start Save Rounds and Alibis now. I finally organized my shed over the weekend.
Oh,
It took me
our
a
long
long
national
time.
nightmare is over.
Oh God. And I think that's the reason why round number 3 hit me so hard. Is talking about your body, because before I was telling you guys in the group chat, I could move around 100-pound things, 200-pound things, and move them around, put them up on shelves, put them down, whatever, no problem, not going to feel it. Now I move one thing that's remotely heavy and I feel it for like a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like garbage. Like my body is even though I've lost weight, like I'm still under 200 pounds, like I'm more healthy than I've been in a while. I still feel like shit. Like just on a daily basis, I get up and I'm like, this is the thing that I'm stuck with. Can I trade it in? Like, why can't, if we have all this technology, why can't we just remove my brain from my physical body like a crab? Like, why can't I be like a horseshoe crab where I just see a new shell that's better than my shell that I currently got? It's prettier. Maybe I have a lavender inside and it's iridescent. Maybe I could just put my brain inside a new human horseshoe crab.
I think that's where we're headed.
I think that's just plastic surgery, but yeah.
No, but I want a replacement. I don't want like a paint job, because that's essentially what plastic surgery is, just a new paint job. I don't want that. I want a full remodel. I want to tear down and reconstruction.
Dude, imagine if you could take all of the knowledge you have in the world now, right? And you just gave you a fresh, like 19, 20-year-old body, you'd be hell on wheels.
You never appreciate it when you have it. You
Youth
never
is wasted on the young. Youth is wasted.
You take
on the
all the
young.
intelligence that I have and all the wisdom and stuff that I have now, and you put it into a younger body. You're basically just talking about cash. He's very advanced.
He's so advanced. He's incredibly advanced. Which, speaking of, I'm getting old lady like neck waddle, like the turkey waddle under my neck, and the baby reaches and he just grabs like fistfuls of my neck fat, and I'm like, oh my God. He has found, like, when we used to do the body fat test in the Marine Corps, and they would use a little pinch.
What the fuck is that? Hey there, fucking turkey neck.
Yeah, hey, that's what he says. He knife hands me with a little baby knife hand. He has found every piece of fat on my body. He really has pointed it out.
Hey there, you cluck. Hey, cluck.
Yeah. Also,
turkeys cluck? No, they gobble.
They gobble.
Yeah.
They gobble.
What clucks? A chicken.
Chicken. Also, so
figure that out.
Long weekend, ton of driving. I was up till 3:30 in the morning on Saturday night into Sunday. And that
old school Katie. We had some Instagram stories with a beer and a cig in your hand.
I smoked 3 cigarettes.
Wow.
I had
How was it?
I was drinking cooked champagne. Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. I'm not going back, but it was great enough to do 3. But I was like, when the wedding ended, I was like, do I go to sleep and have a full night of sleep? Because that would be a treat.
No.
But I'm like, oh, come on. You're only out this once. So I was up till 3:30 in the morning. And then my cousins were being loud till like 4:30. And then I had to get up early. So I had no sleep, drive all the way back, like 5-hour drive. I'm a zombie. But so then Pat has his podcast. So I got the baby right away. I feed him. I give him a bath. I'm so tired. I go to just shift him from his towel to his diaper and pajamas. A poop explosion. When I tell you, all of a sudden I stood him up for a second and he tensed up and poop just exploded out of his butt.
He was mad at you because you left for the night.
My robe, my leggings, my hands, his feet, the quilt that I lay him on, a towel. There was just poop. And once poop gets somewhere, it's like an oil. It just gets suddenly it's everywhere. And he was
like that episode of Saved by the Bell when they had to save the ducks from the oil.
Yes. It just got all over everything. And I was so tired. I was like, I literally was standing there holding him by the armpits and he's happy as a clam. And I'm like,
You're Zach Morris and he's the little duck.
Yeah. I literally did not know what to do. I was like, what do I do next? Like, what do I do? I don't even know what to do right now. So yeah, that's a good time. But anyway, it was so good. I ran down the hallway to get back. When I got back and I parked in the parking garage, I was like sprinting through the building. I could not wait to get back and hold him again. Anyway, that's my save round. Poop.
There you go. All right, Nick, what do you got?
Yeah, on the topic of data. So my background, obviously ad tech, right? So it's not just the fact that we get all of the data. It's also like how you get people to give it over is also like psychological, and they do behavioral models based off people to grab it. And I've done those before, and it's pretty crazy how like different individuals are put into different buckets on, hey, if you do this, this person will give you their email address. They'll give you
Oh
their
yeah,
first
and they
and
did
last
that
name.
because they went and hired some of the top psychologists from different universities around. Like my wife, master's degree is in experimental psychology. A lot of her friends that she went and graduated school with were hired by Facebook from like the University of Texas, Mississippi State. They hired all these psychologists to run studies at Facebook so that they could figure out the psychological profile and how to get more data out of it.
Yeah, and then they'll like index it based off just your browser, like just how you move on a browser, where it goes. There are different type of websites, and they create a model off
Mouse
you,
tracking.
and then they sell it.
Man, what? Mouse tracking?
They can sell. They can track your screen. They can see how long you're looking at a video, how long
I
you're
don't need to
looking
know
at
all
an
this.
advertisement.
See, there's things like even the sexual
pixels that
harassment training that we did at work. They know when you click out of your browser from the main
Yeah.
browser to the not one. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you clicked out, your timer starts over, 4 minutes on the screen. Like, how do you know this?
What?
Not know where my mouse goes.
My wife also, she works in ad tech as well, and she works at a verification company. And essentially, like they can see like how much of your eyeballs have seen based off the pixels that are on a particular ad. And advertisers will
What?
buy based on how viewable the ad is to the user.
Jesus. All right.
Wild stuff. My past
Huh.
life though. I'm not that guy anymore. I'm not that guy anymore.
Sheesh.
Cons, what do you got?
So obviously we've all seen it, and I don't really care what the nuts and bolts of this thing are, but I just think the Build Back Better program, I just think that name stinks. I saw it a few times this weekend. I'm like, you know what? This name stinks.
I don't
It's-
trust any government program that's an alliteration.
Yeah, that's just not a good name. Like, think of a better name. Whatever. Anyway, and then Chaps, I saw you were getting a lot of grief about leaves in your pool.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, bud. You have to still clean them or cover your pool because you'll get algae, you'll get filter problems. Ultimately, you're going to cost yourself more money with all the maintenance you're going to have to
Buddy,
endure.
if you don't think I have a pool man that comes every Monday, you don't know me at all. I'm not doing that shit. That guy can come in. I'm not paying him to do it. I'm not going out there and getting all those leaves.
I think
those
you're over,
leaves,
I think you're
I'll
paying.
clean out the little bucket and dump it to the side. I'm not paying somebody weekly to get the leaves out and then doing it in the middle and do half of his job for him.
I don't
I'm
think
not
you
doing
need
that.
to be. I don't think you need to pay someone. Is my point. I think you are fully capable of.
Oh, I
maintaining
am
your own
fully
pool.
capable. I have zero desire to do it. And the
Okay.
biggest advice that I got from other pool dads, whenever I got the pool, was to get a pool guy or a pool lady. Okay.
Thank
Get a pool
you.
person.
Thank
Another
you.
little alliteration. Have a pool person come out and take care of all these things because you don't want to. If I had to go out there and constantly worry about all the different leaves, all the different junk it would become a burden to me and I wouldn't
Okay,
like it.
and you wouldn't enjoy it. That's fair.
Now I don't do any of that stuff. I occasionally dump a leaf bucket out and that's essentially it. And now I enjoy the shit out of it.
Perfect. Love it. All right, that's all I
Fair.
got. See you in a few
Also, I want to
hours.
say my beloved Roadrunner is number 16 in the country.
Woohoo!
I mean, who would have
Meep,
ever
meep.
thought this? Number 16 in the country. They play University of El Paso, Texas El Paso on Saturday, an ESPN2 game, getting the big bump to ESPN2,
Hell yeah.
which I'm
The
super excited
Ocho.
about. And all these different Texas schools, because Coach Traylor, the coach at UTSA, he was a big time high school football coach here for a long time, has all kinds of connections in the high school coach community. Collins, you know, that's super important as a college football head coach.
Yeah, especially
So,
recruiting. Yeah.
Texas Tech and Baylor and Texas Christian University, we're going to try to poach them away. 10-year contract at almost $3 million per season.
Unbelievable.
I'm super stoked.
Unbelievable.
Super stoked. See you later, Cons. I'll be Cons has got to go do an actual big boy appointment. But we will be back here on Friday. Did you have something else, Kate?
Together.
Yeah, together.
We'll all be
Everybody will be
together.
here together. It'll be
I'm
a great time.
excited. Your whistle pig's on my desk, ready to go.
Oh, very
Still,
good. Nice.
yeah.
Nice. Oh, by the way, I want all the listeners to know that because we've talked about 3 cheese so much, Delta 8 is currently illegal again in Texas.
No. What are you gonna do?
Well, I got a marijuana card,
Oh, well, then you're fine.
but for the people that have relied on it, I don't think that's going to stick around for a long time. But for right now, I think it'd be doing our due diligence to be like, hey, don't be traveling around in Texas if you have any of your 3 chi stuff that is with you. Not
Side
great.
note, Random law thing. Last night, Pat went to Walmart to buy a hoodie for some reason. He was going to screen print something on the back of it. And the entire clothing section in Bergen County, New Jersey, here in this Walmart, and the entire section was fenced off. You couldn't buy clothes. It is a law here that you cannot buy clothing on Sundays. How insane is that? He asked, and that's what they said. They're like, yeah, it's like an old law that just never, you cannot buy clothes here on Sundays. The entire section, you could buy anything else in the Walmart, but you could not buy clothes.
Like that. I mean, we have like the Bluebird laws here in Texas where you can't like buy alcohol and stuff like that, but clothes?
Yeah, that's what it was. It was like a Bluebird wall or whatever. He couldn't buy the clothes. It's crazy.
That's fucking bizarre.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys on Friday. Southern Retreat.